Trauma, Healing, Identity, and Female Sexuality with Sandra La Rosa. Trauma's healing, identity, and female sexuality is what we're talking about today. It is very broad, but yet so interconnected. Situations lived in youth turn into trauma and how we identify with ourselves as women in our adulthood. It defines our friendships, relationships, and how we approach all human relations. Living and seeing domestic violence, covert sexual abuse, and early trauma as a child has many effects in one's lifetime. If this introduction has any triggers for you, you won't want to miss this episode. Trigger warning, this story contains themes of child abuse, sexual assault, grooming, domestic violence, and suicidal thoughts. Reader discretion is advised. Welcome aboard the podcast, A Woman's Spark with Janik, a place to show women how powerful they are and remind them of the spark that they carry, the strength that gets us up every single day. A place to feel seen and understood when we don't fully have what it takes to get back up on a hard day. This podcast is to help you heal and become the best version of yourself during the roller coaster of life. We're building a community of women that wants to help one another become stronger and more united as we were born to be. Today, we're going to discuss the topic of, like we said, trauma, healing, identity, and female sexuality. Did you know there are many types of serious abuse reported every year for women and children? Some worse than others, and there's many tragic events that occur in the world. Those tragic events leave long and forever lasting scars on the person living them. This person carries the hurt, the shame, and the incomprehension of what happened for a lifetime. The types of abuse. The types of abuse are physical abuse, which is intentional use of force that causes harm or risk of harm, like hitting, slapping, punching, kicking, burning, choking. And the impact is an injury, but also a long-term fear, hypervigilance, and trust issues. Number 2, emotional and psychological abuse. This is often less visible, but just as damaging. Like constant criticism, humiliation, insults, gaslighting, withholding affection or love as punishment, threats, intimidation, or manipulation. The impact of that is low self-worth, anxiety, depression, and difficulty trusting yourself. Number 3, verbal abuse. Patterns of harmful communication like yelling, name-calling, belittling, and mocking, constant blame. The impact of that is internalized shame, negative self-talk, emotional instability. There is also neglect, so failure to meet a woman or a child's basic needs, physical neglect, emotional neglect, educational neglect, which creates an impact of attachment issues, development delays, and feeling invisible or unworthy. There are 2 more. We have the sexual abuse, any sexual activity imposed, like touching, exploitation, exposure, sexual content, coercion, or manipulation in sexual acts. Creates obviously deep traumas, boundary confusion, long-term psychological harm. Lastly, control and coercive abuse, sometimes overlooked, like extreme control over thoughts, friendships, choices, isolation, parentification. That impact is a loss of identity, guilt, difficulty making decisions, and people-pleasing patterns. The important thing here, the important truth is even if there are reasons to be angry, abuse of any kind is never the solution. And understanding why does not make it acceptable. Today, we're speaking to Sandra La Rosa. She's the author of the book, It's in Your Eyes. She's here to tell us her story about trauma, healing, identity, and female sexuality to help other women who have lived or are living with abuse. When we come back, we'll welcome Sandra. Welcome back to Women's Spark with Janik. On the show today, we're going to welcome Sandra La Rosa. Sandra is a writer and a memoirist, currently based in Sicily. Lucky girl. Originally born in Italy to a Polish family and raised in Canada, she brings a deeply personal and psychological lens to the themes of trauma. Healing, identity, relationships, they're all interconnected, as we mentioned before. She's the author of the memoir, It's in Your Eyes. It's a raw and emotionally charged exploration of love, desire, and survival. Her story is about growing up in an environment shaped by emotional neglect, domestic violence, and covert sexual abuse, and early trauma of losing her father, which obviously deeply influenced her relationship with love, identity, and self worth. As she got older, those experiences evolved into a deeper exploration of desire, attachment, and healing. Please welcome our spark of the day, Sandra. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Janik. How are you?
Oh, so good. I'm so happy to for you to come on board the podcast. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
So, I developed a lot. I mentioned trauma, healing, identity, female sexuality. I just want to leave the floor to you to explain, for you to explain your story so that the listeners can really understand what you went through.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I basically decided to write a book, just to kind of shed a little bit of light into what healing kind of looks like for people, because it is a very deeply human thing to do. And I fear that um it's been very confused with how you're supposed to heal, right? And so because healing doesn't look a certain type of way,
It's not
and
linear.
so exactly, it's never linear, right? And so I think that going through a lot of trauma, like I have, I was 10 years old, my father passed in a very tragic accident, and at the time it was those big Nokia phones, and he had the house number on speed dial, and I picked up. It was after school. I picked up because I thought it was his regular check-in. And instead, what I heard was his last breath. And that kind of, that stays with you. That's something that stays with you forever. And
Sure.
even though at 10 years old, you grasp the concept of death a lot better than an adult, it does change your perception on people, right? And so um, unfortunately, my mom was completely distraught. She was alone as an immigrant. She didn't know her resources. And so I'm not one to judge how grieving looks, because grieving looks very different on everyone. And people tend to look for different ways to cope. And it's also nonlinear, and it's also maybe not, always the healthiest ways to grieve. She met someone while she was grieving my father, and he turned into our step parent eventually. And through that, he introduced um, a lot of physical abuse, a lot of domestic violence. Every other day, we were walking on eggshells, something that we weren't used to, because my father was a very soft person, soft spoken, and he was very quiet. And so this was night and day for us. It was a completely different experience living with this man in our home. And through all of these different abuse forms that were happening in the house, he was also conditioning me, which I was not aware, obviously, at 10 years old, what conditioning is,
How can you know, right?
right? And so obviously adults in the house failed me, and at 14, he sexually assaulted me. And that happened over a year. About I honestly can't remember how long it was, because my memory is so fragmented of that time. But yeah, and so after that, it kind of, as a teenager, I don't have a dad. I have this person taking advantage of me. I can't even turn to my mom, because my mom is emotionally unavailable, and she's also very psychologically abusive, because she's going through her own things with him, and she's projecting it all onto me.
Mhm.
And so I have basically no one to turn to. So I turn inward, right? And so as a human being, what do you do when you're internalizing everything? You want to please everybody, you're walking on eggshells constantly. But also, it shapes all of your relationships going forward, because you tend to look for validation, and hypersexuality shows up out of nowhere. without you grasping what the concept is really. And so you only start to understand later on in life that, oh, okay, that was a symptom of, and somebody should have known, but no one really, not that nobody really cares, it's just that nobody is informed on what hypersexuality really looks like. And so I wrote this book, a little bit in a dark romance type, just to kind of put a little bit of a spin to it, that even though there was this dark time in my life, I always looked for a way to keep going forward and to find the positive. And yeah, that's basically how, obviously, it's relationships, you're gonna get into bad relationships, good relationships, toxic relationships, but I have to say that I wasn't very lucky in relationships, because I always looked for a certain type of validation in my life, until I met my husband. And my husband was the complete game changer in my life, and he healed my nervous system to a neurological way.
It's important for us women to be in our feminine. You need to have a man in his masculine to really soothe your nervous system, to take on the responsibility of, not the responsibility, but to take on the importance that your emotions and your past have towards your present. So
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
if correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going to go over the
Yes,
information you've just given me. So 10 years old, you lose your father. Is that correct?
yes.
11 years old, your mom meets another man, and by 12, you're sexually abused.
14. I was 14 because he was conditioning me for all these years. He would leave, either some porn magazines out or play some porno videos, when he knew that I'd be, in the house, or just kind of just to expose you, which obviously at the time you don't know what conditioning is, but it
No.
all kind of circles back. And then you understood later on in life, oh, okay, well, that was his way of getting into the, opening that door.
You know what? Even if you seem like you're all together and you're on the other side today, first of all, I'm really sorry you went through that. And I'm really, really sorry. I see you. I understand you, and I'm really sorry you went through that.
Thank you. That's sweet. But, like you said, there's always, you have to find the positive in life, because life is worth living at the end of the day. I know that I've had a dark period in my life where, as a teenager, I was very angry. I was hypersexual. There was a lot of things that I wasn't understanding. My emotions were chaotic. But I always tried to find a way to discharge all of that negative energy, right? I was like, okay, well, I got into playing sports. I was obsessing over boy bands, just to kind of escape, right? And so that
Escape.
was that
Yeah,
was
have an
my escape.
avenue to see something that's much brighter, and there's
I,
always a positive that comes out of every negative situation, and hats
absolutely.
off to you for seeing the glass half full as opposed to half empty. Um, s when did you, and maybe even your mom, get out of this situation?
Oh my. So my mother's still married to him.
Okay.
And I have gone no contact with her now. It's been, my gosh, I think I'm going on 2 years. And for many reasons, not just because of that. I have little sisters. I have an older brother. One sister which I'm no contact with because narcissistic sibling abuse also exists, and it's part of the triangulation that happens in narcissistic households. And so the only reason why I waited so long is because I wanted my little sister to get out of there. And so as soon as my little sister turned 17 and she left for college, she moved in with me. I kind of started to distance myself. I started taking a step back, and and also because I'm a mom too, I have two kids, younger kids, and I couldn't imagine putting my children through any of what they've put me through. And so
It puts
I
your
also,
situation in perspective, right? So that,
absolutely.
like you said, you would never put your children through something like this, and so why was it okay for you to live this situation?
Yeah.
Now, you're talking about siblings. Where do you rank in your siblings?
So I'm the eldest daughter, but my
Ah,
brother is older than me. So it's my brother, myself, and then we have two younger sisters.
were you the one taking care of your siblings through this
Oh yeah.
time? Yeah.
So my mom's first marriage, obviously, it was just me and my brother. And once she got with her current partner, she had two daughters. And so the middle sister is a little, I think, she's in her own way trying to heal, but she's having a hard time understanding a little bit of what my situation is. And we also don't, we have character clash as well. Because there's also a lot of sibling jealousy that was created because obviously in those family systems, what happens is that, a parent always chooses one child that's the golden kid and then kind of pins all the siblings against each other.
Hmm.
And so for my mother, it was my brother that was the golden child, but then my middle sister as the replacement golden child, but she would pin her against all of us, like she would always be like, "Oh, why aren't you more like your big sister who's going to university? Like why can't you get a career like that?" And so that created a lot of resentment for her. She hated me and she still does. And it's so unfortunate because it's a very difficult thing to overcome because that hatred and resentment doesn't belong to me. That's something that belongs to her, to our parents, basically, to her father and to our mother. And it's been, and she's projecting that onto me. So that's the problem with the relationship that I have with my middle sister. And my little sister, the youngest one, she's currently with me in Sicily, and we have a very good rapport because I always took care of her. Like I was 18 when she was born, so she was my little, my little doll, my little best friend. I took her everywhere. I did everything with her. And so we grew into like this mother-daughter bond, but not because I wanted that, but because by default, I always had to be responsible for her.
Yeah.
Whereas my middle sister, we're 10 years apart. And um, I mean, I was 11 years old when she was born. What did I know about babies or children? So it
You
was an
did your
adjustment.
best. You were
Exactly.
parentified.
Exactly.
Put
I
in
was parentified. There you go. That's the word.
um now I mentioned earlier you're in Italy. So from the time you moved out, you've met your husband. Tell us where you're at now.
So, my husband and I are actually friends from high school, and we kind of reconnected in our late 20s. And I had moved out about 28. I think I moved out of the house, but I didn't really move far. I was not too far from them, so that my little sister had kind of like a safe house. And I could always intervene if something was happening because the abuse never stopped. The domestic violence was always present. And so there was a lot of psychological abuse with my younger sister, and that's why I didn't want to be too far from her, and I wanted to stay put for her. And so I moved not too far from them, and I was always there for her. And but the vicinity, because I was so close, it didn't stop them from always overstepping and always trying to mix me into their problems with my middle sister. And so it was a very convoluted relationship that we had going on, even though I was trying to kind of take a little bit of a step back. And so because I was doing that, they then turned to the youngest sister with all of these problems. And so they triangulated her even more, right? So she was suffocating because they would put her in between, like, oh, choose, your mother or your father, or you need to help me figure out why your middle sister's doing this, or and so it was just kind of a recurrent vicious cycle that didn't stop. And so when I got with my husband and we moved away finally, because then we left to Toronto, we lived in Toronto for 5 years. It created so much distance, and it was like a big weight, a burden came off my shoulders. I felt lighter. I finally felt like I could live a life, but my little sister had to pay the price. And so that's one thing that I kind of regretted because we left. I mean, we weren't far from Montreal. We were just, 5 to 6 hours away, but it felt like 60,000 kilometers away.
Totally. So we're going to rewind a little bit just for the listeners. Okay. So if the listeners are hearing your story, if we want to go a step further, what was your state of mind during, you know, 11, you lose your father till the time you actually meet someone who soothes your nervous system?
It's a lot of chaotic misadventures. I became very aware of the world around me and of people and their mindset. I became hyper conscious of patterns. I became a pro pattern recognizer in people. I could tell, if somebody was manipulating me from a mile away, but only in my 20s. It took me that long to get into recognizing red flags and understanding that some people just don't have the best interests at heart for you.
Mhm.
And a lot of people take advantage of your kindness because they see your heart, right? So, yeah, they see that, you're always smiling, you're always positive, and so they're like, oh, well, she doesn't have a care in the world, right?
She can handle it.
There you
or
go.
or
But
they prefer to prioritize their own needs over and
absolutely.
above the respect and the minimum that others deserve.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially like my last relationship before my husband, I got into this relationship under the guise that this man was very decisive. He knew what he wanted, but really he was just a scared little boy behind a mask, because when we started dating, then the real him started coming out, and he was a pushover, didn't do much, and his mom was very verbally abusive towards me, extremely. So I
Mm.
know that we all have, monster in-law stories, but she was not a very nice person to me. Like, she met me the first time, and she was not happy. She was very cold, and I would try and converse with her, and she would just shut me down. She was not interested in having a discussion with me. But then obviously we dated for almost 6 years, and so those 6 years I went through a lot of verbal and psychological abuse from her, because of all the stress, because we had to keep choosing whether he wanted to have a relationship with me or with her. And it was very toxic at that point, and it was very difficult. And I think that's one of the situations that kind of made me realize, okay, I'm kind of falling into a pattern here, and we have a problem. What do I really want? I need to figure out who I am as a person, because clearly, this person has a problem with me and he's not defending me. So I'm doing something wrong, right? Or I'm not enough. And that constant fear of not being enough and not being seen as a valued individual who's gone through so much, it was disheartening, and it was very difficult. But it also kind of pushed me to dig further and to kind of, start healing and start realizing, okay, there's certain people in my life that I can have that don't trigger me. And then there's certain people that I need to remove because they trigger me to a whole different level of my life.
Mm.
And that's so it's it's crazy. It's crazy because you decide to put up with so much, and then when you realize that you don't deserve that, that's when you start to kind of level up as, as your own main character.
Absolutely. I mean, your past being as heavy as it was, it's beautiful that in your 20s you managed to do that work on yourself and really, really put a finger on what your nervous system needed, what you needed and didn't need, and who you were going to leave out of that equation to feel better, and so that your nervous system would inevitably be just calm. So, and you did that in your 20s. Some people don't even do it in their 40s, 60s, or ever in their lifetime.
I
So
know.
that's great.
I know. I mean, to be honest with you, I studied psychology at Concordia, right? And so that was also, I think, part of myself kind of trying to heal myself. And I had fantastic professors who were their office hours turned into my therapy sessions, and I could always kind of, dig into their minds and kind of understand, oh, okay, like this triggers me because of this, or
Mhm.
this happened in my life, and although like I understand why everything happened, why I've been through so much, I try to still have a kindness towards those people, because I understand that they also have a lot of baggage, and I'm very aware that hurt people.
Your past has given you access to deep empathy and compassion for people's lives and experiences. And that's a true gift and a true tool that you can use for the future. And it's created your book. But just before we go into that, what's the one major positive you see? Because there's always a positive that comes out of every negative, no matter how big the negative is. What's the one positive that comes to mind that has shifted for you?
Positive that shifted. I think I think that now in my 30s, I'm just a much serene and happier person, knowing that I've done all that work. And don't get me wrong, postpartum after my first son, it was very difficult, because that's another time that you get triggered.
Yeah.
And
Every difficult transition or every life transition brings some kind of trigger to whatever past you've lived
oh
or
my
think
God.
you've healed, but really you've healed, but it's still always there.
Yes, yes. And that's actually one of those times that even though in my 20s I did so much work, I still, when I was postpartum, when I had my first son 6 years ago, that's when I realized, oh, okay, I thought I healed, but I didn't. And so I kind of had to work through that again. And so it's such a complicated thing when you're healing from trauma, because like you said, it's every big transition in your life kind of sets something off, and then you're like, oh, oh, there's that little ringing in your head going,
Yep.
you didn't heal from this, lady, like try again.
Or there's just another layer of the onion that you just have to peel back
Yes,
again. And it's like,
yes.
oh, great, let's revisit this whole chapter of my life again.
Fun.
So there's one question I ask every guest, and the title of this podcast is called A Woman's Spark. So, Sandra, what was your spark to get back up?
I'm a very optimistic person, and so I always tell myself, no, it gets better. It has to get better at some point. And so that's something that I've always carried with myself, and I always try to see it through till the end, because in every dark tunnel, there's always light at the end of it. And so I always try to keep that spark, and even when you think that you're losing it, something's just gonna come back and be like, hey, I'm still here.
Mhm.
And but for me, honestly, I think it's my husband. He's been such a light in my life, and he kind of brought me back to myself. And I think that's such an important thing, because in my 20s I feel like I was such a lost woman. I had just transitioned careers. I had a huge breakup, from a long-term relationship that I thought was going to end up, my lifetime partner. And instead, it was just this huge transition that happened, and my husband walked into my life, and he was this spark that I was looking for, and he brought me back to who I was.
When you have the right people in your entourage around you that really see you and don't try to change you, but that just really get you and value everything you've gone through, but just are there and soothe your nervous system, I think it makes a whole world of difference.
You're absolutely right about that.
To get to the juicy part,
Yeah.
what's the constructive that's come out of your whole life experience in this case?
Constructive. Um,
What constructive has come out or that you want to do with
oh my
your
gosh. I think I just want to be able to show women that it's possible, that you can find someone who will bring this spark into your life and just reignite you, because a lot of women that are stuck in either toxic relationships, or that still have a hard time healing, finding someone, like you said, that's your anchor, it changes everything. And I know we live in 2026 where relationships are so complicated, but there is someone for everyone, and that someone is there just waiting for you. You know, maybe they don't have the map yet, but they're there. And I want to give people the hope that you can get to the other side. And I mean, you'll never be fully healed. That's just something that you'll have to live with, but it's not your identity and it's not who you are.
And it's not your day. You don't wake up every single day reliving your past, and it's how you decide to spend your day to
Exactly.
that
And how
makes
to
it
move
better.
forward, right?
Absolutely. So thank you for those great words. Sandra, obviously, I don't want to forget to talk about your book. It's In Your Eye by Sandra
Yes.
La Rosa. Do you want to finalize a little something about your book? Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Um, so I wrote my book. It took me 4 months to write it. I'm not gonna.
Wow. 4
I do
months.
have.
Wow.
I was very inspired. And so because we just moved to Sicily almost 2 years ago, and so last summer I just felt so inspired, and I told myself, you know what? I feel like this is a story that I can reach women, especially women, young women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, because there's so many women that have gone through similar situations that I have, but they didn't find their spark back. And I want them to know that they can still find their spark back. And I want to share that with the world. And I want women to feel like, you know what? Adventure is calling, and they can get out there and they can find their anchor and keep moving forward.
I love it. Thank you. For all the listeners, if you want to follow Sandra, you can follow her on Instagram at authorsandra.larosa, or you can go on TikTok, same thing, at author Sandra La Rosa. I'm going to put the details in the summary below. So if you want to follow her, I think you'll gain just so much more love and so much more perspective as to where you can go if you've lived something similar like this and you're actually having a hard time getting up every day because you just can't find your anchor. It is possible.
Always.
So thank you, Sandra. Thank you for coming on a podcast.
Thank you, Janik. It was such a pleasure.
To all you beautiful women out there living with any kind of abuse, reliving your traumas every day, being triggered all the time by what you've lived in the past, you are seen and you are not alone, and you matter. And your life is worth living. Your journey doesn't define you. It creates a version of you that is resilient and has many beautiful things to offer in this lifetime to the right people. Thank you for sharing your journey again, Sandra. This is it for us
Thank
for
you.
today. Tune in every week on your favorite podcast platform. If you want to get involved with the Be Guided, Be Inspired community, or you have a story to share, or you want to listen to a story, write us and we'll connect together. Let's change the world of women one conversation at a time. Keep sparkling. Have a lovely day. Bye.